Ostracized over my inheritance, I sought peace but faced humiliation. This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. I stood at the doorstep, gripping the bottle of whiskey in my hand, my fingers tightening around the glass as I debated whether or not I should turn around and leave. I never wanted to come here, not after everything that had happened over the past few years, but some foolish part of me still thought I could mend things. Dad was turning 57, and despite the way they had treated me, despite being cast out like a stranger, I wanted to see if there was anything left to salvage. Maybe I was an idiot. Maybe I should have known better. When the door swung open, Olivia stood there, her eyes widening in surprise. "Jeffrey?" she said, blinking. I didn't know you were coming." I forced a small shrug. Figured I'd show up for Dad's birthday. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if she needed approval before stepping aside. "Come in," she said finally. As I stepped inside, the sound of laughter and conversation filled the living room. Family members sat comfortably, drinks in hand, enjoying the night as if everything was normal. For a moment, I let myself believe that it could be. Then Dad saw me. His face hardened instantly, his posture stiffening. The room fell silent. "You," he muttered, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. "What are you doing here?" I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to remain calm. "I came to wish you a happy birthday," I said, lifting the bottle slightly. "Brought something for the occasion." He scoffed. "We didn't invite you." Mom, standing beside him, let out a cold laugh. "Why are you even here?" she added. "You always bring trouble. Just leave." I clenched my jaw, willing myself not to react. I had come here to make peace. This was the response I got. I glanced around at the rest of the family. They all sat there, stiff and silent, their gazes darting between me and my parents. No one spoke up for me. No one ever did. I let out a slow breath, setting the gifts down on the table with deliberate care. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "Just wanted to celebrate with you." Dad let out a sharp laugh. "Celebrate?" he sneered. "You're nothing but a loser. You think a few gifts will make up for everything?" And just like that, something inside me cracked. Years of being treated like dirt. Years of being cast aside. Talked about like I was some parasite. I clenched my fists, inhaling sharply. Then, just as I was about to turn and leave, something else hit me. I thought about the past 2 years. Olivia's rent. The bills I had been covering because Mom and Dad refused to lift a finger. How I had been the only one keeping her afloat. I exhaled slowly. Then I looked my father dead in the eye. "Fine," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I'll go." I turned toward the door, but before I stepped out, I glanced back. "Oh, by the way," I added, "since you don't want me here, I guess you won't want my money either. I've been paying Olivia's rent because you refused to help her. Not anymore. That's on you now." The silence was deafening. Their faces froze in pure shock. Mom's expression twisted from indifference to sudden panic. "Wait, Jeffrey, let's talk about this." "No," I cut in. "I'm done. You don't want me here?" "Fine, but you'll regret this." I turned and walked out, ignoring the voices calling after me. As I reached my car, I could still hear them at the front door, pleading, shouting. I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. 6 missed calls from Olivia. 3 voicemails, a dozen texts. I ignored them all. But eventually, curiosity got the best of me, and I listened to one of the voicemails. "Jeffrey, what the hell is going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out, saying you cut me off. They're blaming me for everything. Call me back. I sighed, tossing my phone onto the bed. Of course, they were blaming her. When things went wrong, my parents never took responsibility. They were always looking for someone to throw under the bus. An hour later, my door slammed open. Olivia didn't knock. She stormed in, arms crossed, her eyes flashing with anger. "What the hell have you been doing?" I leaned against the counter, watching her calmly. "Good to see you, too." She shot me a glare. "Dad called all the relatives and told them you threw a tantrum at the party. Now half the family is pissed at me because they think I'm the reason you stopped paying my rent." I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, what?" "Yeah," she huffed, throwing up her hands. "Uncle Mark called me this morning and asked if I was plotting with you against Mom and Dad. This is insane." This was unexpected. I hadn't realized just how quickly the rest of the family had gotten involved. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. "Olivia, I'm sorry you got dragged into this, but I'm done being their scapegoat. They've treated me like garbage ever since Grandpa's inheritance. They didn't even want me at Dad's birthday. I'm not going to keep playing nice while they humiliate me." Her expression softened for just a second. But then she squared her shoulders again. "They could have at least talked to me first," she muttered. "You know I need that money." I met her gaze. "I know, but maybe it's time for them to step up. They're your parents, too. Why should I be the one keeping you afloat while they sit back and do nothing?" She hesitated. I could see the war playing out inside her head. On one side, she knew I was right. On the other, she was torn between me and them. Finally, she let out a frustrated sigh. "This is going to get ugly," she muttered. I exhaled slowly. "I'm ready for it." It got ugly faster than I expected. By the afternoon, word had spread like wildfire. Some of the family took my parents' side. Some started quietly cutting them off. But Olivia? She was stuck in the middle, and she didn't like it. 2 nights later, she sent me a long text. She called me selfish, accused me of abandoning her when she needed me the most. It stung, but I knew she was just lashing out. I didn't respond. 2 days later, things blew up again. Dad showed up at my workplace. He wasn't even trying to hide his rage. "You embarrass this family," he hissed. "Do you realize how many people are turning against us because of your stunt?" I stared at him, unimpressed. "You think you're better than us now, don't you?" I laughed bitterly. "Better than you? No. But I'm not going to let you treat me like dirt anymore." His eyes narrowed. "You're going to regret this, Jeffrey." I shook my head. "No," I said simply. "You are." He stormed off without another word. I watched him go, feeling lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I still remember the day I found out why they hated me. Grandpa had always been someone I admired. While my parents saw him as an old man with outdated ideas, I saw him as someone who had fought for everything he had. He built his business from the ground up, never relying on handouts. He taught me the value of working hard and standing on my own 2 feet. Maybe that's why he chose me. When the lawyer read the will, I almost couldn't believe it. "Mr. Jeffrey has been named the primary beneficiary of his grandfather's estate," the lawyer said. "He will inherit the house, the savings, and the remaining assets." I was in shock. I had no idea Grandpa planned to do this. I had assumed he would split it between everyone. But my parents, they reacted like I had stolen something from them. "What do you mean he left everything to Jeffrey?" Mom snapped, her voice filled with outrage. Dad shook his head in disbelief. "This has to be a mistake. We're his children, not him." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "The will is clear, Mr. Henderson. Your father made his wishes known. He left everything to Jeffrey. Olivia sat in stunned silence. It was the only time I had ever seen her at a loss for words. "This isn't right," Dad muttered, pacing back and forth. "He must have been coerced." I finally found my voice. "I had nothing to do with this," I said, my hands clenched. "I didn't even know about it until now." "Bullshit," Dad's voice boomed through the office. "You must have manipulated him, convinced him to cut us out." I stared at him in disbelief. "He was the one who always told me you two never appreciated him. He said you only called when you needed money." Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "He was always playing favorites," she spat. "I should have known he'd pull something like this." I felt like I was suffocating. They weren't mourning. They weren't upset that Grandpa was gone. They were furious because they didn't get his money. "You know what?" I said, standing up. "If Grandpa saw how you're acting right now, I think he'd be glad he made this decision." Dad's face twisted in rage. "Get out," he growled. "Gladly." As I walked out, I could feel Olivia's eyes on me. She didn't say anything. She just watched. Like she was already deciding which side she wanted to be on. Weeks passed, and the storm didn't die down. My parents were still reaching out to relatives, desperately trying to spin their version of events. They wanted everyone to believe that I was the villain, that I had somehow stolen what was rightfully theirs. But the cracks in their lies were showing. Uncle Rob told me that some of the family had finally started questioning things. "Your dad called me last night, ranting about how you ruined him," he said. But when I asked him why Grandpa didn't leave him anything in the first place, he had no answer. Aunt Lisa had been more direct. She told my mother, "Maybe if you had treated Grandpa with more respect, he wouldn't have cut you out." The people who once blindly supported them were starting to see the truth. But Olivia, she was drowning. After losing my financial support, she struggled to keep up with rent. She reached out to relatives for help, but the response was cold. "Maybe you should get a job," Uncle Mark told her bluntly. "Jeffrey paid for you long enough," Aunt Lisa added. "It's time to stand on your own." She even tried setting up a GoFundMe, claiming she had been blindsided by an unexpected financial hardship. It didn't work. Donations trickled in, but not enough to save her. And Mom and Dad? Without my money, they couldn't keep up with their debts. The house, Grandpa's house, was repossessed by the bank. They tried to fight it, but without me, they had nothing to leverage. One day, I got a single message from Olivia. "You really did it. You really left us." I stared at the words for a long time before responding. "You left me first." She never replied. That was the last I heard from any of them. I focused on myself, on my future, on the life I had put on hold for so long. And for the first time in years, I felt free. What did I learn from all this? Family isn't about obligation. It isn't about giving to people who only take. Family should be about mutual respect. And when you realize that respect isn't there, when you see that you're being used, you have every right to walk away. So tell me, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? Was it hard, or was it the best thing you ever did? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.